Hello everybody, welcome to the I Am IT Geek YouTube channel. My name is Shabazz and as ever, I am the IT Geek. Welcome back to another episode in my Microsoft Entra Deep Dive series. So we've only had a few episodes at the moment. We've got plenty more to come, and for those that are just joining us, I'll put the link to my previous episode in the description, but we're covering everything that is Microsoft Entra, so it's a combination of Azure AD and some other features and services as well. And they've kind of as Microsoft do, they've changed all their branding with it. So even though you can currently access Azure AD as it used to, in the old sort of dashboard and Blade, Microsoft Entra is obviously the latest sort of admin center that Microsoft have kind of rebranded and released. So I thought it'd be quite good to go through that. And there's a lot of good identity stuff in there. And, kind of looking at it from a basic perspective, going up to more sort of complicated, some use cases, and also talking about some best practices. So let's get started with this episode, and I'll do a bit of a recap as well about what I covered last week, or in the last episode of last week. So as I mentioned, this is a Microsoft Entra Deep Dive series. And just to do a bit of a recap, as I mentioned, about what I covered in the last episode. So that was around Azure Active Directory specifically and users. And again, like I'm going to in this episode, I'm going to spend a lot of time in the portal, in the admin center, showing the different features, doing some configurations and talking about some best practices. So we kind of looked at management tasks first of all, and this was kind of going into a user, looking at the dashboard, looking at the user settings within a user account, and what tasks we can do. So that includes changing the properties, changing the name, resetting passwords for users, changing the groups they're assigned to, and those sort of tasks. And then we kind of looked at the user settings. And this again, this was specific, so not individual user settings, but the actual tenants user settings. So it included, being able to register applications, connecting to your Azure AD account to LinkedIn. And also we looked at sort of guest users and sort of the access they can have. And then that moved us on nicely, if you remember, to speaking about guest users versus member users, the differences. And then I actually went into, we actually created a guest user, and I showed you how to do that. It was very similar to creating a normal user. We did that I showed you how to do that as well. And then I just kind of discussed some best practices around sort of especially guest users and user management. So this episode is actually going to be based around groups. So we're going to move on, and as I'll show you in the portal shortly, we're just moving down that left-hand side of the Microsoft Entra Admin Center, looking at different features and services. So we're going to look at management tasks, similar to how we did with users. There's also group settings, again, for the tenant rather than the individual group. Then we're going to discuss group types. Now when I look at management tasks, I will show you how to create a group. But I'm going to just do a standard security group, I'll show you how. Again, it's the same method, but the slight difference with something called dynamic groups, which I'll explain what they are. It's slightly different when configuring those. So once I've done the group types, I'm actually going to show you again how to configure a dynamic group. It's all going to be in the portal. What I will do is I will put URLs to how to create them, and also do it through PowerShell as well. So you've got a bit of alternative kind of bit of testing you can do there. And then, as I will talk about some, and throughout the episode, I'll talk about best practice. So there's not going to be a specific, at the end of the episode. But one other thing, so I did mention in my intro episode a few episodes ago that I will be doing giveaways. I've got loads of books. Because obviously, if you've been following my series where I do book reviews, I've got loads of books. So the first book that I'm actually going to give away is, let me just remove this. So this is one of the first books I reviewed. So this is Ryan Mangan, blocking the name. Ryan Mangan's Mastering Azure Virtual Desktop book. This is a beast. This is a beast of a book. So it is secondhand, unfortunately, because I've obviously spent a lot of time reading it when I was first doing it. But this is a great book. Ryan's a good friend of mine, and he's so knowledgeable, especially around VDI, Azure Virtual Desktop specifically. I know this book did really well, and I highly recommend it. So I'm going to give this book away. So to win this book, there are a few things you need to do. It's not just giving them. I'm going to a little bit back as well. So if you're on social media, you have to reshare this video with the hashtag #IamITGeek, and you also have to like and comment on this video #IamITGeek. So the hashtag is #IamITGeek. I'll put the explanation in the video in the description below as well. And find that you have to be a subscriber already. So if you're not a subscriber already, you need to get subscribed, and follow those little things. So if you want for your social media, be it Twitter or LinkedIn, reshare this video with the hashtag IamITGeek, and then comment and like the video. And the comment needs to be hashtag IamITGeek. And what I'll do is, I'll do a draw. I'll draw it out, and I'll contact that person, and I'll announce it as well. So I've got like a couple of day gap between my videos. So again, I'm not giving away in every episode. So this is the first episode I'm going to give away, and this is a really good book. So if you do like Azure Virtual Desktop, I enter this little competition. So I've got loads more books to give away throughout the series. So yeah, let's move on now. So let's get started with this episode. And the first episode I'm going to cover, the first topic I said I'm going to cover is that management task one. So let's move into the portal and have a look. Welcome back. So here I am in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. As I mentioned, going down this left-hand pane here, we looked at users, and I've done the recap already, so I'm not going to go back into that. So let's get into groups here. So again, just clicking on all groups, this gives you like a lot. It's very similar to the user settings. If you look, remember that when we went through the users, you've got a list of all the groups here. We're going to look at some of these shortly, but here at the top, you can either create a new group, you can download groups, which essentially will just download to a CSV all your groups. And you can also, if you wanted to, you could highlight one and delete the group. Obviously, we're not going to do that. So if we look at, let's just go into one of these groups. So this is an AVD. This is one I've created. Straight away on the overview, it shows us it's an assigned group, and I'll explain what that means shortly. It's a cloud group, so it's not synchronized with Azure AD. So we do have certain groups you can synchronize groups with Azure AD Sync. So that's the source is a cloud, so it's not Active Directory source. It's a security group, and I mentioned we've got different groups, the object ID and when it was created as well. Again, here gives us an idea of some other information. So how many members, are there any groups that are embedded in this group, and then how many devices this group associated with. I think group membership. How many does it have? Any? Does it have any? Is it a member of any other groups, or how many owners does it have? So if we click on the properties, again, here we can actually make changes. So at the moment it's called AVD-users. We could change that if we wanted to. And again, we can put a description. Again, as a best practice, I always recommend putting a description. It just makes it easier for you to manage moving forward, So, obviously I created this group so I know. Say that I'm not there one day and someone needs to do something on this group. You'll see AVD-users. Okay, it might be a bit self-explanatory, it's for AVD, but if it's just easier putting a description in. So if I just go Azure Virtual Desktop, if I could spell desktop, that'd be good. Users group. That's a extra explanation. We can save that, and our description's there. So group type. So this is a security group, as I mentioned. We've got different types of groups, and we're going to go into those in a bit later. So I'm not going to ruin that quite yet. But that is something you cannot change. You cannot change the group type once it's been set. So make sure when you are creating your groups, you make sure you create as a correct group type. Otherwise, you will have to recreate it or delete it and recreate another one. So membership type. So if we've got, because this is a security group, there's three types of groups you can have. Membership types. So again, we're going to be looking at this in a bit more detail as well. So there's either assigned, a dynamic user, or a dynamic device. So again, this is something we can change. So click on dynamic user. We have to add a dynamic query. So I'm going to be showing this later on. So dynamic user is a dynamic security group for users. A dynamic device group is a dynamic security group for devices. So very specific there. Later on, I will show you how to do the dynamic user. And it's the same process for a dynamic device, okay? But again, we're going to leave this at assigned for now. Now, the other thing is this little bit here. This is very important. So Azure AD roles can be assigned to the group. So we're going to look at down here in the, I think is it protect and secure? I think it is. There's an area where we're going to be looking at roles. Specifically, I think it might be in the identity and governance piece, where we look at roles and role-based access. Oh no, here it is. there's a roles and admins part here. So we're looking at roles and role-based admin there. Now, with Azure AD roles, I'm not going to go into too much detail about them, but this toggle here allows you to choose whether or not you want to assign roles to groups. Now, you can only set this when you are creating the group. So as you notice, it's grayed out. Once it's grayed out, once you can't. Once you've created that group, you cannot change this. So again, it's important that you set this right at the beginning. Now, mine's set to no. However, as another best practice, I would actually recommend that you do select this, and again, as we'll go through in the roles and admin section later on this series, that you actually assign your roles to your groups rather than individual users, because it's less management. If you imagine you've created a custom role that you want to assign to multiple users, you'll have to do, if you assign it to each user individually, it's more management. It's to take longer. Whereas if you create a group, and we will do this when we get to the roles and admin, if you create a group, you can just add all those people to that group, and as and when a new user comes on board that needs that custom role, just add them to that group rather than having to assign them to that role. So again, I'd always recommend that you actually tick yes to this. And then group write back state, again, whether or not you want to write this, write the security group back to on premises or not, we're going to have no write back. We're just going to leave it as it is. So that's just kind of the properties that we can change. Look at members. This is essentially where we add people to the or remove people, where we manage users basically. So we can click on add member and add who we want there. We could select that and remove a user. Again, bulk operations, we can import. If we have multiple users, we can import multiple users from a CSV. We can remove users that we've got, and again, we need to create a CSV and configure a CSV, or we can download. Say that we need to do a bit of investigation on members of this group. We can actually download the members to a CSV file as well. But yeah, this is where you can individually add or as a group add users to this security group as a member. Again, owners. Again, I don't have any in mind, but again, I do recommend you have owners. It just means it's whoever's responsible for this group. It doesn't have to be an administrator. It can be, say, especially with departments. A lot of organisations have multiple departments, be it engineering, finance, marketing, etc., IT, or whatever. It's always good to have an owner of that. So it would normally be a manager of that particular team, or maybe even the person who's actually requested the group. You just make them the owner of it. So essentially, again, you can give these people permissions as well to manage the group to a certain level, but it just means they're responsible for this group. So always, again, as a best practice, I would always add probably a couple of owners, just so, again, no single point of failure, you have a couple of owners in there. So roles administrators, this is where we essentially see what roles are assigned to this group, and you can't actually, because I've not got any because mine's not assigned, but you can see the roles and any administrative roles assigned to this group. Administrative units, again, we do have a section on administrative units, part of roles and admins here, which we'll go through. But you can assign an administrative unit to this group if you want. We don't have any, but we will later on in there, and I'll show you how to do that. But again, as a best practice, I recommend that you do that. You assign administrative units to groups rather than users, because again, it's just less administrative work, and you're minimising that administrative footprint. And if you save time there, you can spend that time doing something else, developing or innovating. Group membership. This is again is this group a member of any groups? If we can make it a member of that group if we want. So yeah, again, this is any embedded groups. Is this part of any other groups? Okay. So let me just see. I want to remove that. Really, I don't want it to be part of the that particular group. It's got a lot of access. So if I just remove that again, you can add and remove groups as you please there. Applications, is this group assigned to any applications? And again, we'll probably look at that when we do the enterprise applications part of. I think it's the is it next one? No, it's a couple episodes time. We'll look at enterprise applications. Again, assigning resources to groups in general. You're going to hear me harping on about that, so I'll just say it in general. Any resources, be it devices or not devices, but applications. And we've spoken about the roles. It's easier to assign them to groups rather than users. Okay, and for the same reason that I've mentioned, it's less administrative work. long term. Again, we will go through assigning an application to a group when we touch on the application section in a couple of episodes' time. Licenses, again, you can, as I'm sure if you're not aware, you can actually assign a license to a group. And again, when you do have multiple users that are need the same license, it just makes sense from a management perspective to do that, to assign a license to an actual group, and it'll assign it to all those users in that group. So again, if you just easy to add a user to the group, especially if you have a dynamic group. Say, okay, everyone in your London office needs to have a specific license. Say the enterprise mobility. You could, when I'll show you the dynamic group, you can make it so as soon as that user is created with certain attributes, say again a certain word or a certain set of letters in their description or in their name or in their office name, they'll automatically be added. You can automate them getting added to that group, this group for example, and getting assigned a license straight away. So again, it's automating and minimizing that management footprint again. Very, very worthwhile doing. And this is the Azure role assignment. So whereas here we have Azure AD roles, this is the Azure resource role assignment. So this basically states what Azure resource roles is this group assigned to, and we can see here it's assigned to the storage file data SMB share contributor role, and that is because it's an AVD role, and that's for the users. So again, we've got the two types of roles. Again, I'm not going to go into too much information about here because I do want to cover a lot of that in the identity and governance area. But again, you can see what, and again, you can actually change the subscription. You've got multiple subscriptions. Are there any subscriptions in any of the groups that it's assigned to? In my case, the answer is no. I've only got the IMIT Geek subscription. And as we go further down here, there's obviously this is more the identity and governance stuff. For PIM, you can enable Azure AD PIM for this group if you wanted to. Is there any access reviews for this group? Or we can create a new access review for this group. Again, I'm not going to do that now because I want to do that in the identity governance topic that we're going to cover. Again, looking at logs and any bulk operation results as well. And at the bottom, you can obviously create a support request. So if I just go slightly out of here, just back here, I just want to go through the creating a group before we kind of move on to the next topic. So here again, so this is where we get to choose: are we creating a security group or a Microsoft 365 group? And I'm going to talk about the differences between these shortly. But let's say, for argument's sake, we're going to create a security group because these are more for like kind of Azure resources and Azure AD resources. These are more for Microsoft 365 resources like SharePoint, Outlook, and I'll go through that shortly. But let's say it's a security group. Let's give it a name, a description. Oh, so this is the name. I am IT Geek Demo. I want to give it a description. This is a demo group. Now, as I mentioned, I believe, in my opinion, I think, I'm not sure if this is a Microsoft best practice or not, but in my experience, in like the sort of real life in use cases, I'd always make this an assignable role or an Azure AD role assignable, so you can actually use this to assign roles to multiple people. But if you notice, when you do toggle that, the membership type has to be assigned, so you can only have Azure AD roles that can be assigned to an assigned membership type. So it does not support dynamic groups. So if I did mention doing it for dynamic groups, that's for licensing. So you can do it for licensing, but not for role assignment. Okay. And then here, let's select an owner. We'll give Brucey, give Batman that opportunity. And then let's just select some members here. Where am I? Let's do a search. Search for me. Let's give my Gmail and my Hotmail account. Okay, so let's select that. And then any roles. Now, again, I'm not going to go through this yet because I want to do it later on. But technically, we could assign a role here. I'm not going to assign any now. So that's step one. So I mentioned creating a group to which Azure AD roles can be assigned is a setting that cannot be changed later. So as I mentioned, you can't change that. So if you set it to yes or no, whatever you do, make sure it's what you want because you have to delete the group otherwise if it's wrong. And that is basically some of the management tasks you can do there, including creating a group. As I mentioned, I'm going to create a dynamic group later on in the episode. So let's move back now to see what the next topic is. So the next topic we're going to look at now we've kind of done the sort of management task, is the group settings. So let's jump back into the portal and take a look at some of the group settings that we can configure. Welcome back. So here we are in the back in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center, but we're down here in the group settings area, part of the portal here. I'll minimize some of these so it's less confusing. So as we can see, we've got plenty of settings here. So at the top here, this is the self-service group management. So owners can manage group membership. So we selected some, we said it was a best practice in my opinion to especially in real life, real case scenarios, to probably select a group owner. So really we want this to be yes, I think, because think about it, this is if enabled, users can request security group or M365 group memberships, and then group owners can approve it or deny it rather than IT admins. So again, it takes a little bit of stress and a little bit of work away from the IT team, and allows your trusted sort of group owners, which are normally management, let's face it, or team leaders of a specific group. So I think they're trusted enough to do this, and this feature requires Azure AD Premium. So you need to have an Azure AD P1 or P2 license assigned to the owner to be able to do this. And then here we have, restrict user ability to access group features in Access Panel. Group and user admins will have read-only access when the value is set to yes. So we're looking at global admins will have access regardless of the value set here. So if we set this to yes, you're restricting the user ability to access group features in Access Panel. So they will have read-only. So if we leave that at no, they will have, be able to amend the access group feature. So again, selecting that as yes, we restrict user ability to access groups features in the Access Panel. Security groups. So again, we've had a bit of self-service running there, but security groups. Users can create security groups in Azure Portal, API, or PowerShell. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't think users should be able to do that. That should still go through a request and approval process. So the user, if they do need a group, they should request it and then get it approved. So again, I'm talking about real life scenarios here, in my opinion. If you let users have that sort of access and control to be able to create users, you're going to have the Wild West, and it's going to be difficult for your IT team to manage that tenant. So that's a no in my opinion for security groups. Users can create Microsoft 365 groups in Azure Portals, API, PowerShell. Again, I'm not a fan of users creating those groups, because then that's going to allow them to have have further control over Microsoft Teams sites and SharePoint sites. So again, I think this should go through an approval process, a request and approval process. As a best practice. So again, and then those are the sort of group settings. We can save that then. Again, down here we've also got expiration. So this is around renewal notifications are emailed to group owners 30 days, 15 days, or 1 day prior to the group expiration. You can set expiration dates on groups. Again, I've not come across a scenario where I've had to do this, but if you do have that requirement where, okay, maybe a project team is only going to be live for say 6 months, you think, okay, you know what, I'm going to create this group and have it active for 6 months before it's disabled, and you can this is just that sort of notification process of getting people getting the relevant people alerted to when it's going to expire. And naming policy. So this is very important in my opinion. Having a strict naming policy. I think I might have mentioned this before with users. Again, there's no good best practice. So make sure you have a naming convention. As you saw in mine, I don't really have a naming convention. I just call it. This is my personal tenant, so it's just a bit of a to test and demo. But definitely recommend having a naming convention that's going to make sense to you as a business, as an organization. So could have your organization a kind of acronym in there. 3 letters, for example. Could have the location of the group, or the team could have the team acronym and maybe a number, something like that. But just try and make sure you stick to your organizational naming policy. You should. Most organizations have one, so try and stick to that. Okay, so there's not a lot on the group settings. That's the group settings. Let's jump back into the presentation now, because I'm going to start talking about the different group types and go through those. Welcome back. So here we are back in the presentation. As I mentioned, we're now going to actually look at the different group types. So as I mentioned, first of all, we've got security groups. So these are similar to your on-premises sort of security groups that we have in Active Directory domain services. Again, similar in as far as you can assign them to sort of file shares if you have any file shares on servers. You can also assign them to resources within your platform, within your tenant, and you can again assign them to roles as well if you need. So here again, it's a security principle is created when you create a security group, and again they're created natively within Azure AD. As I mentioned, you can sync Active Directory groups if you want, but we're talking specific security groups in Azure AD. They are created natively. Again, you can create them through the portal, admin portal as we saw, or PowerShell or REST API. So I will put some URLs in the description on how you can do those as well. As I mentioned a few times now, you can sync from on-premises if you want. So if you have, especially if you have a hybrid environment where you have resources both on-premises and in the cloud, you can, and again, this is quite common in hybrid situations. A lot of people they actually use Azure Active Directory to manage users and groups. So unless you're cloud native, it's probably rare that you're going to create a security group on the cloud in Azure AD. You'll normally sync it from on-premises because again you've got that hybrid tenant, that Azure AD sync. And finally, you can assign groups, users, devices, and service principals as members to security groups. So that's important to remember, and have a play about that. Have a play about with adding service principals and devices as well. As we saw, you can have a dynamic device group. So then we've got Microsoft 365 groups. So these are enabled. These are to facilitate permissions to Microsoft 365 resources. I mentioned some of them already. We mentioned Outlook, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive. So again, you create a Microsoft 365 group when it's kind of access permissions to your SaaS sort of products. And you can also grant permissions to outside your organization. You can't do that with security groups, but with Microsoft 365 groups, you can actually grant permissions to users outside your org. Again, especially when you try to do collaborations with partners or clients, maybe. But you can only have users as members. You can't add, service principals. You can't add devices. So just one thing to you can only add users in Microsoft 365 groups. Finally, dynamic groups. So this is probably I'll say it's probably the most complicated, I suppose. But this is automated. This allows you to automate user management in groups because, like I said, when a user joins, if or when you create that user, if they've got a certain attribute that matches the dynamic configuration that we've put in, which we'll go through in a second, they'll automatically be added to that group. It's member attribute based, as I mentioned, and this is for devices or users. You can have a dynamic device group, as we saw, a dynamic user group, and you cannot manually add or remove members. It has to be that certain attribute that you change for them to be removed, or if you want them to be added, you need to add that attribute. So let's jump straight back into the portal now and take a look at how to create dynamic groups. Welcome back. So here we are in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. We're in Azure Active Directory, and we're in all groups. So let's go to new group, and it's going to be a security group because we want to do a dynamic. I'm going to do IT Geek Dynamic Demo. This is a demo group. So again, as a best practice, we would normally do that as yes, but as we saw, we can't change that membership type, which we need to for a dynamic group. So we're going to select no because it doesn't. Azure AD roles assigned to group do not support dynamic groups. We'll do dynamic user in this case. So again, select an owner. That's fine. Now this is where we need to put a dynamic. Now normally we would assign users manually, but we need to do a dynamic query here. So you can use a rule. So this is a rule builder. So we want to add an expression here. So when and or, so this is we can do and or here. So if we go for and, for example, let's choose a property. which property or which which attribute do we want it to be. So let's say let's go down to let's do where is it now? User principal name. Let's use that user principal name. Okay. Now let's choose a value. So if I go SHA, okay. So what's that saying is contains as well. Sorry, so let's just choose an operator. So let's do contains. So what we're saying is you can use the rule builder or rule syntax. So we're doing the rule syntax here. So if we've got a property, the user principal name that contains SHA, they'll be added to this group. Okay, that's essentially what we're saying here. So that's added it there. If we see that, that's a rule syntax, and then we can save that, and then we can create that. And this takes a bit of time to sync, but if we just go across, I have created a dynamic group here. It's that one there. Well, that's all users. There's another dynamic group I've created somewhere. It's that one there. Test lab day. So group membership. Oh, sorry, members. So here it's added. This is another dynamic group I created. If we look at the properties of this group, we should be able to see the syntax. I think it's in the properties. Let's have a look at where that is. The dynamic membership rules. Sorry, it's right in front of me. So here, what we've done is something similar. So we've done given name contains SHA. So any given name that contains SHA will automatically be added. So if we look at all these, look at Shabazz Dar, for example. Given name is SH, has got SHA in it. Same with SHA. So all these users have SHA added to them, which is why they have automatically been added into this group. So similar to, let's see if that group has turned up yet. Let's do a quick refresh. IMIT Geek dynamic demo. So let's see if this is added to members. There we go. Same thing. So we've just created this. It's we can see in the properties, it's a dynamic user group. And you saw I did not add any users. I did not add any users manually because I've chosen their given name to be added if they've got SHA in it. These are the Shabazz Dar, Shabazz Gmail, Shabazz Hotmail, Shabazz Dar. So all these users have SHA in their given name, and that just, again, it's just automated. So if I was to create a new user, call it Shabazz 5 or whatever, then they would automatically add it into this group. So that is groups essentially that we've looked at as part of the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. So a bit of a deeper dive there. Talked about some best practices. We've talked about how to manage groups and how to add members dynamically. We've also talked about the different group types, which is very important you understand that. We've also, again, don't forget, I am doing this book giveaway. Just to recap, I'll put the instructions in the description. But the Mastering Azure Virtual Desktop book by Ryan Mangan, you can get this book. And again, just to recap, what you need to do is share the link to this video on your socials and put the hashtag IMITGeek, and then like and comment on the video, hashtag IMITGeek. And I will select a winner at random, and I'll announce it on a future video. So thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.